problem is, get your brother to the label, he a rat. He a snitch, we don't want to hear that. So now he got a choice to make.
Birdman didn't get attacked by outsiders. He got dragged into court by the very people who helped build Cash Money. Artists, producers, even trusted partners all tell the same story. Hit records, millions made, and no money paid. From proteges to plaintiffs, this is how Birdman's inner circle became his biggest legal threat. The pattern emerges. The attacks against Birdman started early in Cash Money Records history. UNLV members Lil Ya and Tech N9ne sued the label in the 1990s over unpaid royalties after their group members died in New Orleans street violence. Kilo G was murdered in 1996, Pimp Daddy in 1994, and Yellow Boy in 1997. The surviving members claimed they received nothing for their work, and the case settled out of court. Wendy Day, who brokered Cash Money's $30 million distribution deal with Universal Records, claimed she was denied her 5% finder's fee. According to reports, Birdman told her to sue him for payment. This set the tone for future business relationships. BG, who signed with Cash Money at age 12 in 1992, later stated he received no royalty checks for albums released before 1998. He left the label amid accusations of being cheated. Lil Slim departed after his 1995 album, citing unfair distribution of sales proceeds. The Hot Boys era brought the disputes into sharper focus. Juvenile left Cash Money in 2001 after his album Project English, initially seeking $4 million in a settlement that Birdman refused. Juvenile hired lawyers and secured $11 million. He returned briefly in 2003, but left again over financial disagreements. Turk sued for $1.3 million in 2015, citing shady accounting. The case settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Manny Fresh, Cash Money's in-house producer, exited in 2005 over financial mismanagement and pursued legal action, emphasizing money as the core issue. The lawsuits shared common themes. Artists and producers claimed Birdman withheld payments despite commercial success. Many cases settled privately, preventing full disclosure of Cash Money's financial practices. The pattern suggested systemic issues rather than isolated disputes. By the mid-2000s, multiple former Cash Money artists had either sued or publicly complained about unpaid royalties. The label's reputation suffered despite its continued commercial dominance. New artists signing with Cash Money faced questions about whether they would face similar treatment. The timing of these lawsuits often coincided with artists' attempts to leave the label or release new material. This suggested the disputes were tied to contract terms and creative control. Artists who wanted independence found themselves battling over money they believed they had already earned. Settlement agreements typically included non-disclosure clauses, preventing artists from discussing specific amounts or terms. This made it difficult to establish clear patterns or hold Cash Money publicly accountable. However, the sheer number of cases pointed to recurring problems. Former Cash Money artists often spoke about loyalty and family when describing their early relationships with Birdman. These same artists later used different language in court filings, describing breach of contract and financial exploitation. The transformation from protege to plaintiff happened repeatedly. The legal costs of these disputes were substantial for both sides. Artists had to hire lawyers and pursue lengthy legal proceedings to collect money they claimed was already owed. Cash Money spent resources defending multiple simultaneous lawsuits. The financial and reputational toll accumulated over years. Some artists attempted to resolve disputes privately before filing lawsuits. These attempts typically failed, leading to formal legal action. The pattern suggested Cash Money was unwilling to address payment issues until forced to do so through litigation. The disputes also affected working relationships between Cash Money artists. When one artist sued, it created tension with others who remained on the label. This fragmented what Birdman had promoted as a unified musical family. Business disagreements overrode personal relationships. The producer rebellion. Producers became particularly vocal plaintiffs against Cash Money, especially regarding Lil Wayne's blockbuster album Thought Carter 3, released in 2008. The album sold millions of copies and produced multiple hit singles, generating substantial royalty streams that producers claimed they never received. Bangladesh sued Cash Money and Lil Wayne for approximately $500,000 in unpaid royalties for producing A Milli, one of the album's biggest hits. He later faced similar issues with another Wayne track, 6 Foot 7 Foot. Bangladesh publicly stated that Cash Money doesn't pay royalties, emphasizing that producers had to sue to get compensation. His case settled out of court. Diesel claimed $20 million for producing Lollipop, the album's chart-topping single. The massive claim reflected the song's commercial success and streaming revenue. This case also settled privately, with terms undisclosed. Play and Skills sought $1 million for their work on Got Money, another major single from the album. The production duo joined the growing list of hitmakers pursuing legal action. Their settlement came after extended negotiations outside public view. Jim Johnson sued for $500,000 over his royalties for Lollipop, adding another claim related to the same hit song. Multiple producers working on single tracks filed separate lawsuits, complicating Cash Money's legal position. DVLP pursued $200,000 in 2015 for his work on Lil Wayne's tracks and other artists' music. His case represented the ongoing nature of payment disputes years after Thaw Carter III's release. The resolution of his claim remains unclear in the public record. A court ordered Cash Money to pay $114 million in royalties in 2015, representing accumulated debts to multiple parties. This court-mandated payment demonstrated that legal intervention was sometimes necessary to force Cash Money to fulfill financial obligations. The producer lawsuits revealed specific details about Cash Money's payment practices. Producers typically signed production agreements that specified royalty rates and payment schedules. When albums succeeded commercially, producers expected payments based on sales, streams, and radio play. Instead, they received nothing or significantly delayed payments. The legal filings described attempts by producers to contact Cash Money's accounting department. Phone calls went unreturned. Emails received no response. Formal demand letters were ignored. This forced producers to hire attorneys and file lawsuits as the only means of communication that Cash Money would acknowledge. Some producers had worked with Cash Money for years before filing suit. They initially gave the label the benefit of the doubt, assuming payments were delayed due to accounting complexities or industry standard practices. When months turned into years without payment, they realized the delays were intentional. The pattern affected Cash Money's ability to work with top-tier producers. Word spread throughout the music production community about payment issues. Some producers began demanding upfront payments or refusing to work with the label entirely. This limited Cash Money's creative options and damaged its industry relationships. Producers also faced challenges when attempting to work with other artists. Their credits on Cash Money releases were valuable for their resumes, but the payment disputes created complications. New clients would ask about the lawsuits, forcing producers to explain why they were suing over work they had already completed. The concentration of lawsuits around Thaw Carter III was particularly significant. The album was one of the biggest releases in hip-hop history, with mainstream crossover success. The fact that even producers of such a massive commercial triumph had to sue for payment suggested that commercial success didn't correlate with prompt or fair compensation at Cash Money. Settlement negotiations often dragged on for months or years. Cash Money's legal strategy appeared to be prolonging disputes until producers accepted reduced amounts or faced mounting legal costs. This disadvantaged individual producers who lacked the resources for extended litigation against a wealthy record label. The producer cases also highlighted issues with music industry accounting. Royalty statements are complex documents that require expertise to interpret. Producers claimed Cash Money's statements were incomplete or inaccurate. Verifying the accuracy required expensive audits, which producers had to fund themselves before seeing any disputed payments. Jazz Prince, who discovered Drake and brought him to Cash Money, claimed millions in overdue royalties from Drake's deal with the label. His claims persisted into 2015, involving one of Cash Money's most successful artists. The dispute showed that even those who brought major talent to the label weren't immune from payment issues. The Lil Wayne crisis. The most significant legal battle against Birdman came from Lil Wayne, the artist who had been central to Cash Money's success and whom Birdman had mentored since childhood. In 2015, Wayne filed a $51 million lawsuit against Cash Money Records and Birdman, alleging withheld payments, failure to register copyrights properly, and deliberate delays in releasing his album Thaw Carter V. The lawsuit detailed years of financial issues between Wayne and the label he had called home since age 12. Wayne claimed Cash Money owed him $8 million for the album Thaw Carter V alone, plus an additional $2 million advance that was never paid. The total figure of $51 million represented accumulated unpaid royalties, advances, and damages.
Now this whole time Lil Wayne is suing Birdman, Lil Wayne's not able to release music because Birdman is basically his record label, so he says, no, you're not releasing anything, just to be petty. And this basically slows Lil Wayne's career down to a halt, and then Drake becomes the #1 rapper. But I digress. Birdman doesn't care because he signs another gem, a man named Young Thug. Now Young Thug is selling records, so Birdman's like, Lil Wayne, you're not releasing no music forever.
The timing of the lawsuit was crucial. The Carter fee had been completed, but remained unreleased, with Wayne claiming Birdman was holding it hostage. The album's delay became a central point of contention, with Wayne arguing he was being prevented from fulfilling his contract and earning from his work. Wayne's legal filings described a breakdown in what had been presented as a father-son relationship. Birdman had discovered Wayne as a child and guided his Wayne's career. Wayne had publicly called Birdman his father figure. The lawsuit transformed that narrative into one of business exploitation and broken trust. The case revealed details about Cash Money's contract structures. Wayne's deal included provisions for album advances, royalty rates, and release schedules. The lawsuit claimed Cash Money systematically violated these terms, withholding money while continuing to profit from Wayne's catalog. Public statements from both sides turned bitter. Wayne posted messages on social media declaring himself a prisoner of Cash Money. He expressed frustration at being unable to release music or receive payment for years of work. The statements contrasted sharply with earlier interviews where he had praised Birdman's mentorship. The dispute affected Wayne's entire business operation. He ran Young Money Entertainment as an imprint under Cash Money, with artists like Drake and Nicki Minaj signed to his label. The financial issues with Birdman threatened Wayne's ability to maintain his own artist roster and fulfill his obligations to them. The case settled in 2018, with Wayne reportedly receiving over $10 million and gaining control of Young Money Entertainment. The settlement allowed Wayne to finally release Thaw Carter 5, which debuted at #1 and became one of 2018's biggest albums. The commercial success proved Wayne's claims about the album's potential value.
However much money you want, let me know and I'll give it to you. But the courts ordered Birdman to give Lil Wayne money. Birdman lost, but Birdman always brags about, I gave Lil Wayne $50 million. You owed him 70. But Lil Wayne says live and let live, and it seemed to move on.
However, the resolution wasn't complete. Wayne filed an additional lawsuit in 2017 seeking another $10 million in unpaid royalties, indicating the 2018 settlement didn't address all outstanding financial issues. This second case's status remained unclear in subsequent years. The Wayne-Birdman split had industry-wide implications. It showed that even the most successful artist-mentor relationships in hip-hop could deteriorate into bitter legal disputes over money. It raised questions about how many other artists might be experiencing similar issues without the platform or resources to fight back. The dispute also exposed the emotional manipulation that can occur in music industry relationships. Birdman had positioned himself as Wayne's surrogate father, creating a family dynamic that made it harder for Wayne to challenge business practices. When Wayne finally did file suit, he had to overcome not just legal obstacles, but emotional ties that dated back to childhood. Wayne's case differed from other Cash Money disputes in its scale and personal nature. While producers sued over specific tracks and former artists sought unpaid album royalties, Wayne was claiming systemic exploitation over 2 decades. His lawsuit represented the accumulation of years of allegedly unfair practices. The public nature of the dispute damaged both parties' reputations. Wayne faced questions about why he had remained with Cash Money for so long if treatment was unfair. Birdman faced accusations of exploiting the artist who had been most loyal to him and most responsible for the label's success. Industry observers noted that Wayne's lawsuit empowered other artists to challenge their labels. If someone as successful and loyal as Wayne could sue Birdman, it normalized the idea that business disputes should be handled through legal channels rather than personal appeals or public pressure. The settlement terms remained largely confidential due to standard non-disclosure agreements. However, the fact that Wayne gained control of Young Money and promptly released Thaw Carter 5 suggested he had achieved his primary objectives. The financial settlement amount, while substantial, may have been less important than regaining creative freedom. The aftermath of the lawsuit saw no public reconciliation between Wayne and Birdman. Unlike some former Cash Money artists who eventually returned or made peace, Wayne maintained distance from his former mentor. The relationship appeared permanently damaged by the legal battle and underlying financial disputes. The violence allegations. Beyond financial lawsuits, allegations emerged linking Birdman to violent incidents, most notably the 2015 shooting at Lil Wayne's tour bus in Atlanta. The shooting occurred in the context of Wayne's lawsuit against Cash Money, leading to speculation about retaliation over business disputes. An indictment alleged a conspiracy involving Birdman and Young Thug, with shots fired at Wayne's tour buses after a performance. Jimmy Winfrey, a Young Thug associate, was convicted as the shooter, though his sentence was later overturned and the case retried. No shots hit anyone, but the incident created fear and legal complications. Phone records showed calls to Birdman immediately after the shooting and calls to Young Thug before it occurred. Prosecutors cited these records as evidence of coordination. The timing suggested the calls were related to the incident, though Birdman and Young Thug denied involvement.
Pee Wee Roscoe slides in and goes, I don't forget. So he drives over to Lil Wayne's tour bus and $20,000 in damages. Speeds off. Police go, boy, we know it was you. Pee Wee Roscoe said, all right, it's pretty obvious. Y'all got it. They take him to jail. The police check his phone and see that he called Birdman. he also called Young Thug like 8 times.
Prosecutors also referenced Young Thug's rap lyrics from his halftime music video as evidence of intent, specifically lyrics referencing violence against Lil Hootie, which was Lil Wayne's early alias. This controversial use of rap lyrics as evidence sparked debate about artistic expression versus criminal conspiracy. Wayne's bus driver sued Birdman, Young Thug, and related entities for assault and emotional distress. The civil lawsuit sought damages for the trauma of being present during the shooting. The driver's perspective as a non-industry witness added credibility to claims about the incident's seriousness. Birdman denied any involvement and vowed to investigate who was responsible. No criminal charges were ever filed against him, despite the phone records and ongoing investigations. The district attorney considered charges, but ultimately declined to prosecute Birdman or Young Thug directly. The shooting allegations resurfaced years later during the 2022-2024 Young Thug YSL RICO trial. Testimonies from FBI agents detailed the phone records connecting the parties. However, one statement about Birdman being angry at Young Thug was ruled hearsay and excluded from evidence. The violence allegations extended beyond the bus shooting. Early Cash Money history was marked by tragedy, with artist Kilo G murdered in 1996, Pimp Daddy in 1994, and Yellow Boy in 1997. These deaths occurred in New Orleans' violent bounce music scene and weren't directly attributed to Birdman, but they created a backdrop of danger surrounding the label's early years.
He testified several times. I can't remember his name. Belknap. Belknap. He's with City of Atlanta Police Department. Whether he is alleging that Mr. Brian Williams was part of any type of conspiracy, any type of gang. He said no. It's entertainment for show. He has no information. He was not making that claim. So it's total hearsay.
More recent allegations appeared in social media and YouTube videos. A 2025 YouTube video claimed Birdman abused Lil Wayne, attempted to kill him, and sparked a war in Atlanta. These claims lacked substantiation and appeared to be speculation rather than documented evidence. The video represented how online content can amplify unverified allegations. Another video claimed Birdman's associates confronted Master P, escalating to threats. These incidents remained unverified through credible sources. The pattern of violence allegations created a narrative that was difficult to separate from reality.
You were there.
Yeah,
Where?
at the compound.
Aha.
Huh.
Okay.
In 2019, speculation arose about a potential indictment against Birdman for Cash Money's operations. The indictment never materialized, suggesting the speculation was unfounded or investigations didn't produce sufficient evidence for charges. The use of rap lyrics as evidence in the bus shooting case raised constitutional questions. Defense attorneys argued that fictional artistic expression was being treated as factual confession. Prosecutors countered that the specific references and timing showed intent beyond artistic creativity. Courts have struggled with how to handle this issue across multiple cases. The violence allegations complicated Birdman's public image beyond the financial disputes. While lawsuits about unpaid royalties could be dismissed as business disagreements, allegations of violent retaliation suggested something more sinister. However, the lack of criminal charges against Birdman indicated insufficient evidence for prosecution. The intersection of violence allegations with business disputes created a narrative where financial conflicts could escalate to physical danger. Whether this narrative reflected reality or resulted from speculation and media sensationalism remained unclear. The phone records provided some evidence of connection, but stopped short of proving conspiracy. The bus shooting's impact on Lil Wayne was both practical and psychological. Beyond the immediate danger, it demonstrated that his dispute with Birdman had potentially violent dimensions. This may have influenced Wayne's approach to subsequent negotiations and his decision to ultimately settle rather than continue litigation indefinitely. Industry observers noted that violence allegations, even unproven ones, had business consequences. Artists considering signing with Cash Money had to weigh not just financial concerns, but also potential safety issues. This gave Birdman's competitors a talking point when recruiting talent. The pattern of allegations without convictions suggested either insufficient evidence for prosecution or the difficulty of proving criminal cases beyond reasonable doubt. Phone records and circumstantial evidence can indicate possible involvement without meeting the legal standard for conviction. This left the allegations in a gray area that damaged reputations without resulting in accountability. The legacy and continuing impact. The accumulated lawsuits and allegations have defined Birdman's legacy as much as his commercial success. Cash Money Records has sold over 100 million records, launching careers of artists like Lil Wayne, Drake, and Nicki Minaj. Yet the label's business practices overshadow its musical achievements in many discussions. Birdman's net worth exceeds $150 million, reflecting decades of success in the music industry. His wealth contrasts sharply with the claims from artists and producers that they weren't paid fairly for their contributions to that success. The disparity raises questions about how profits were distributed. Some former Cash Money artists have reconciled with Birdman. Juvenile briefly returned to the label after his lawsuit was settled. BG, released from prison in 2023, has focused on reform rather than revisiting old disputes. These reconciliations suggest that relationships can be repaired, though they often come after artists have left and pursued independent careers. However, many relationships remain permanently damaged. Lil Wayne has not publicly reconciled with Birdman since their settlement. Manny Fresh has maintained distance from Cash Money despite being instrumental in creating the label's signature sound. The broken relationships represent human costs beyond financial damages. The pattern of disputes has made Cash Money a cautionary tale in hip-hop. Young artists are warned by managers and lawyers to carefully review any deal with the label. This reputation makes it harder for Cash Money to sign new talent at a time when the music industry is more competitive than ever. The disputes also reflect broader issues in the music industry. Record labels have historically been accused of exploiting artists through complex contracts and opaque accounting. Cash Money's cases represent extreme examples of practices that occur throughout the industry, from major labels to independent operations. Artists' ability to sue represents progress in power dynamics. In earlier eras, musicians had little recourse when labels withheld payments. The emergence of music industry lawyers who specialize in royalty disputes has given artists tools to fight back. Cash Money's lawsuits demonstrate both the ongoing exploitation and the increasing willingness of artists to challenge it. The financial scale of the disputes is staggering. Combining all the lawsuits mentioned in court records, the total claimed amounts exceed $100 million. Even if many cases settled for less than the claimed amounts, the cumulative financial impact on both Cash Money and the artists is substantial. The disputes have educational value for the next generation of artists. Music business courses now use Cash Money as a case study in what can go wrong in artist-label relationships. Understanding these disputes helps young musicians negotiate better contracts and recognize warning signs of exploitation. Social media has changed how these disputes play out. In earlier eras, lawsuits would be handled privately with minimal public attention. Now, artists can tweet about unpaid royalties, post videos explaining their grievances, and build public support before or during litigation. This transparency has shifted power toward artists who can mobilize fan bases. The ongoing nature of disputes suggests systemic issues rather than isolated problems. If Cash Money had addressed early complaints and changed its practices, later lawsuits might have been prevented. Instead, the pattern continued for decades, with new plaintiffs emerging regularly. As of January 2026, no major new lawsuits against Birdman have surfaced in recent months. This could indicate improved business practices, fewer active artist relationships to generate disputes, or simply that current conflicts haven't yet reached the litigation stage. The absence of new cases doesn't erase the historical pattern. The disputes have also affected how success is measured in hip-hop. Raw sales numbers and chart positions don't tell the complete story if the artists who created that success weren't fairly compensated. Birdman's wealth and cash. Money's commercial achievements are now inseparable from questions about who profited and who was exploited. The legal system's handling of these cases shows both its strengths and limitations. Courts can order payment and enforce settlements, providing recourse for wronged artists. However, the process is expensive, time-consuming, and often results in settlements that keep specific details confidential. This limits the system's ability to create accountability or prevent future disputes. The violence allegations add a darker dimension that transcends financial disputes. While money can be repaid through settlements, the psychological impact of threats or actual violence has lasting effects. The bus shooting incident, regardless of who was ultimately responsible, created trauma for those present and fear throughout Wayne's circle. The use of Cash Money's controversies in hip-hop's ongoing conversations about business ethics ensures Birdman's legacy will be debated for years. Each new generation of artists and fans discovers the history of lawsuits and allegations, forming opinions about whether Birdman is a visionary mogul who built an empire or an exploiter who profited from others' talent. The complexity of these issues resists simple conclusions. Birdman did provide opportunities for artists from New Orleans who might not have otherwise broken through. He did build a successful business that changed Southern rap's national profile. He also faces documented documented evidence of widespread payment disputes and allegations of worse conduct. Both realities coexist in his legacy.